Welcome to Living After Faith. You can find us on the web at livingafterfaith.com, on Facebook at Facebook/livingafterfaith, livingafterfaith.tumblr.com. We are the official podcast of recoveringreligionists.com, which is a fabulous project with meetup groups all over the country. Please feel free to visit that and check this project out. I'm Deanna Joy Lyons.
And I'm Rich Lyons, and we're glad to have you with us today. We've been on kind of a hiatus. We moved actually out of the studio, which the studio before was literally a studio apartment. Now we're in a one-bedroom apartment, and our studio is in the closet.
So we are coming to you from the closet every week.
Yes, Living After Faith is now in the closet, but we'll get over that. Actually, we kind of like it in here. It gives us a little space that's just the studio and lets the living room be the living room. And since we are living after faith, we need a living room.
We need a place to live.
Yeah, so it works okay for us. We've got an email here that I wanted to share with you and answer a question that it asks, because it asks a very good question. It's a question Deanna and I have talked about quite often, and as I have become an atheist and grown a bit in my atheism. At first I said, I'm an atheist, but I don't think there needs to be any atheist organizations. Why do you need an organization if you don't believe anything? And then real quickly I figured out you needed it because there are things that churches do that are good services, but if you're not in a church, then you aren't privileged to those services. So there do need to be atheist organizations. But as I began to realize and work and study and kind of come into my own as an atheist, I realized there are even more important reasons that I didn't realize at the time. And this letter kind of addresses them.
It says, "Hey, Rich, I first heard you on KUOW.
We want to thank Jeremy Richards for letting us on KUOW.
Yeah, that was very cool. And since then, I've listened to all your podcasts. Great stuff and a very interesting story. Thank you for sharing it with us." You're welcome. So just a little background. I, too, am an atheist, but followed a much different path than you did. My parents were both raised attending Christian churches. My mom was a Catholic, complete with boarding school, Irish nuns, the whole bit. My dad was a Methodist. They each left their respective faiths early in adulthood, although they still don't describe themselves as atheists. When I was growing up, they never actively encouraged or discouraged me or my younger sister to attend church. We were never even baptized. My folks never really discussed faith or religion in depth that I can recall, although I did occasionally ask them specific questions about their religious upbringings, and they didn't shy away from the topic. They simply allowed me to make up my own mind. As an adult living in Seattle, I've discovered that there are a great number of kind-hearted, open-minded, and politically liberal people who nonetheless profess a kind of lefty Christianity or even non-denominational deism. Many of these people are my good friends. Their words and actions demonstrate true love, respect, and kindness every day. I don't hide my atheism from them, but I usually opt not to initiate discussions about my faith in keeping with my a-religious upbringing. So even though I disagree on principle with religious faiths of all kinds, I am an equal opportunity atheist. The pragmatist inside me wonders, if a few kind-hearted and loving people take solace from this mild and seemingly innocuous brand of religion, what harm is it doing? I'd love to hear your opinion on a future podcast. Thanks, and keep up the rational work.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, is that very thing. In the past, I have said, there are religions, there are aspects of religion that are benign. But as I have advanced or matured in my atheistic approach, I really no longer believe there is such thing as a benign religion. And I know that'll be offensive to Christians, people of any religion. I understand that. It's not my purpose to be offensive, but I'm not going to hide from honesty in an effort to avoid being offensive. So today, Christians, religious people, you'll just have to be offended. I apologize for that, but I don't apologize for what I'm going to say. And the honesty here is, number one, you say it's seemingly harmless. But let's examine that. Is it really seemingly harmless?
I don't think so. I think any system that encourages you to not only believe things that are unproven or unprovable or even, mysterious and set your brain aside and just use faith, I think that is harmful in itself. But also there's kind of a benign parental sort of aspect to this, where deep down inside, a lot of people believe that God is going to take care of them, that whatever goes wrong is part of some bigger plan. So, As with these shootings in Arizona, people said God had plans for Gabby Giffords, and so that's why he allowed her to live. And that completely ignores the 6 other people that were killed, including that innocent little girl. It's like, let's disregard, let's not think about the tragedy that happened here, and let's pretend that in the end, everything is really okay. Or no matter how bad things are, I don't have to do anything personally to improve my life or improve the lives of the people around me and make them happier, healthier, better people. I just have to sit back and wait for God to do it.
God's never going to do anything because God doesn't exist. And waiting for God to do something, that's part of the poison of our system right now. Trusting that it's all going to work out in the end. I don't trust that it's going to work out in the end unless we work on it to make it work out in the end. There is no God who's going to make it better. So, number one, taking solace in this seemingly harmless, innocuous brand of religion, is it really innocuous? Number one, it leads people to inactivity. Number two, it causes people to have that solace when in fact they should be angry. There are things that happen that should make us angry. The shootings in Tucson, that should make every American angry that we have allowed it to reach this point, and it is time for action to be taken. And if we just pray about it, it won't go away. It's not going to change anything. So having that solace in a time when there is really no solace there, I can't see how that's a positive thing. But my most serious, rather than thinking, wow, it leads people to inactivity, it allows people to justify horrific things that happen as the will of God. I preached a lot of funerals as a pastor, and one of the things people said, and I quit saying it because it quit making sense to me, is it's all part of God's plan. I'm like, really? I preached the funeral for a woman who hanged herself in the jail after she was sexually assaulted, drank herself into a binge, got arrested for DUI, and then hanged herself in a jail. Can anyone explain to me how that's part of God's plan? If that was part of his plan, like I've said before, he's a bigger asshole than I am, because I'd have never planned for someone to meet their demise, being sexually assaulted against their will, going out and trying to drink themselves into oblivion to get it out of their mind, and then get stopped for DUI and hang themselves in a jail cell. Am I part of the plan?
It doesn't sound like part of the plan. And if there weren't a godly belief to invoke, those around this woman could have gotten her counseling for help from her sexual assault. They could have given her real tools in real life to deal with the situation that happened to her. She probably was in great denial. What did I do that I'm so bad that God let this happen to me? Because you hear that a lot. People get, they blame themselves for the bad things that happen to them because somehow it's like the birds falling from the sky in Arkansas because Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. What?
Absurd.
Really?
Absurd.
You can connect any number of bad things that happen to, minor sins or whatever people perceive as sins in life. And I think that's a big part of the problem, too. In general, this very mild lefty Christianity, it's not real obvious, those things. Like, you can say, well, the Christian right, who are, trying to get laws passed to prevent gay people from getting married. They're trying to keep gay people from serving in the military. They're trying to teach bullshit creationism in schools. You can see the actual physical impact they're having. Whereas this more innocuous brand seems like, well, it's just giving people, motivation to be nice to each other and some happy feelings about what's going to happen in the future, and they don't have to fear death. When you bypass rationality and you give people these weird justifications, it still is a harmful thing because it is not allowing them to live in reality.
One of the things that is my most ardent argument against seemingly innocuous religion, and that is it buys credibility for these ultra right-wing crankpots. For the woman who says, don't ask, don't tell, that the repeal of that law, which was a horrible law, for the repeal of that discriminatory law, that God is angry and he's killing birds.
What, were the birds gay?
The absurdity of that. Anybody with a little bit of sense scratches their head and says, that's just plain stupid. But the problem is you can't come out and say that because this seemingly innocuous religion buys the credibility for the crackpots.
People say, well, you can't go criticizing all Christians because of this. Well, we're not criticizing all Christians, but I think most Christians don't believe that, and they should criticize their own. We can't be the only assholes out there saying, hey, look at the weirdos. What are they? They're saying terrible, weird things that hurt people and don't make any sense because everybody says, well, most Christians I know, they're not like that. So everybody falls under this big umbrella that says Christian, or, same thing with Muslims, same thing with,
right.
Heck, even Buddhism lives kind of most of the time in La La Land.
I've had other people ask me the same question. Well, my church isn't like that. Okay, then your church ought to be on the forefront screaming at this idiot saying, you are a fucking moron.
You don't represent me. You don't represent most Christians. You need to fight against those people.
And when you don't do that, when your seemingly innocuous brand of religion does not take that stand, then what it does is, by default, buys the credibility for the crackpots. That's my main focus, my main reason on why I don't believe there is any such thing as benign religion. Because those people who are, like you said, seemingly innocuous, they don't subscribe to a dogma, they can be liberal, because it doesn't really matter. But what you come up with is a painting of the picture of Christianity as a whole as being seemingly innocuous. And we know that's not the truth. It's not the truth for the majority. I think the majority of Christianity does cause people to have problems. We'll be talking with Dr. Darrell Ray very soon again. And one of the things we'll be talking about is how religious requirements, sexual requirements, messes people up. And one of the things that Deanna and I have talked about, even people who weren't raised in a religious system of sexual abuse still have to face the consequences brought on by that.
My whole life as a woman, I have faced these societal messages. There are, conflicting ideas about what men and women should be. And a lot of this does kind of come from religious ideas, especially of purity. Now, I'm a very sexually positive person. I've got a lot of energy in that department. And I've always tried to keep myself a very ethical person. I have always tried to treat my lovers as friends. If I am not in a specific relationship with them, I've always, used my morality to the best of my ability. So I, obey the campsite rule, as Dan Savage would say. You leave your lover better than you found them. Now, all of my life, I've had this terrible, crushing guilt forced upon me. Well, you must not have had a good daddy around because, you're obviously seeking solace in sex, or, good girls don't do that. All of these messages. And then at the same time, like, oh, you got to be sexy. You got to be, dressed up to the nines. This is not directly from religion because I haven't been in church very much in my whole life. I get angry when I think about all of the young women who are affected in the same way that I have been. And I've pretty much gotten over it, but I'll tell you, I sure do blush in shame when I think about, some of the adventures that I have had that, to be honest, were pretty much innocent. I mean, nobody was harmed. Nobody had a bad time. Everybody shares, of themselves in many different ways. And it's not a bad thing. But I still, feel this guilt. Like, what have I done? I am so impure. I'm a bad person. I mean, this is real stuff. And that's not even coming out of a cult. Sorry, babe.
That's all right. So just to kind of sum things up, number one, it encourages people to live in a dream world. In that process, it discourages actual cognitive thought. It discourages objective thinking and speaking. It discourages the ability to size up something from a intellectual perspective. While you've got your mindset going in an illogical fashion, your thoughts kind of form around that. So a lot of times I've met people who I say, prove to me that your God exists, and they can talk for 30 minutes and not give one thing that even sounds like an inkling of evidence or proof or demonstration that there is such thing as a God. And yet to them, that is constructed as proof. If that's the way they think, then there are other situations in life where they're going to be equally inept at constructive, cognitive thought. So religion discourages, it encourages a dreamland and discourages thought. The seemingly innocuous brand of religion buys credibility for those that are nowhere close to innocuous. As radical, as crazy a religious wacko as someone can be is justified, is covered by the seemingly innocuous. And finally, there are things that reach into society from religious, where the religious background covers and counts and damages lives. And in the process of damaging lives, even though parts of it may seem innocuous, there are still the stigmas, the stereotypes, the false morality of religion. And just that being out there is detrimental to society.
How many times do you read news stories that are supposed to be, impartial, and there's no specific bias either way, but the entire, they'll talk about a criminal and they'll say, well, Mr. So-and-so was a good Christian, he was a good neighbor, we never thought anything of it. And automatically people assume that because you are a believer and a Christian in general, they've worked very hard on this little PR here, that you are a good person. How many child molesters have worn the frock of authority in a church, and nobody ever would think twice about leaving their small child alone with this person? But at the same time, nobody even bothered to do a background check because, Pastor so-and-so, he's a pastor, he's a good guy, there's no reason to even suspect.
That's our view. And I know it kind of strayed a little bit from our focus of coming out, but as people are coming out of religion and coming into atheism and trying atheism on for size, you have to look at things and decide, why do I believe what I believe? What do I really believe? And I hope that our process today helps you to understand our view and gives you something to think about. You don't have to adopt my view. That's one of the beautiful things about being an atheist. You can take whatever side that you want to take on any argument. And you're right. You're okay. It's good because there is such a diversity. The only thing as atheists that we are bound to agree on is we don't believe in a God.
One of the nice things about being atheists is that we don't just define ourselves by what we do believe, but we define ourselves by what we don't believe. That's kind of how we get our start going to what we do believe, because we've left behind, most of us, a religious system that has things that we don't agree with. And we can say, you can say, that you don't agree and you don't believe in the amount of hate that was in your church previously. Right. And that helped you define what you do believe now. You took the negative and you turned it into a positive. You said, I don't believe in hate, so what do I believe? And you looked into it and you realized you believe in love and acceptance for everyone.
Exactly. Some of the things that we've got coming up, I want to promote a little bit. We will be talking again with Dr. Darrell Ray. He's got some exciting things happening on the front of sexuality.
He's doing a survey. We have a link up on the blog and the Facebook page and the Tumblr page now. So if you want to do Dr. Ray's survey about sex and religion, whether you have come out of religion or you never have had it, this accommodates that. So I filled out the survey. It only took about 10 minutes.
We'll also in the near future be talking to Eric Maisel. He is the author of The Atheist Way, and his book is one book that I have found extremely helpful to me in coming out of Christianity and becoming an atheist. One of the things I dealt with was meaning. I would look at life from the end of the universe, whenever human life ceases to be, and say, it's all immaterial. It doesn't matter. Nothing has meaning at all. And his book has a very unique process of helping you understand and create your own meaning in life. And that, to me, has been an exceptional value, and we're very privileged to have him on the program. That's coming up in a couple of weeks.
And coming up soon, Hector Avalos, professor of religion and religious studies at the University of Iowa. I heard him recently on an episode of The Bible Geek, and boy, him and Robert Price just tore it up. But I think we're going to be talking more about his own personal journey, which is very interesting as well.
I was surprised to find out he was Pentecostal.
And a child evangelist.
Wow. I'm sure his process is going to be very interesting. It's something that we'll want to discuss. I'm Rich Lyons.
And I'm Deanna Joy Lyons.
We are Living After Faith.
Come laugh with us.